Welcome to Meadville, Pennsylvania. Located 45 minutes from the beautiful shores of Lake Erie in Crawford County, Meadville is an area rich in history and local pride. Join us as residents show and tell everything that makes their community a great hometown. Your friends and neighbors welcome you to our town, Meadville.
I'm Pam Roberts. I'm the Community Center Services Director at Active Aging, Inc. And I'm also so very lucky to be the coordinator of Through a Veteran's Eye, a Salute. Active Aging, this is our 40th year, and we provide services to older Crawford Countyans throughout the area. And once upon a time, back in 1999, we had two of our volunteers, Ray and Shirley Packard. They thought we should do something for the veterans. After all, we had just built this big addition to our senior center. So we said, okay, let's have, and they came up with a couple old uniforms. World War I, their parents were in World War I, and then they had some World War II uniforms. And we had a few things of memorabilia. Well, let me tell you, it was so exciting because we had like over 250 people pop in that day. And I remember it was cold, it was rainy, it was sleety, and you could see from the second floor, these guys, there's no parking anywhere, they were walking up the street in their uniforms that didn't fit, and they were there to celebrate and have a salute for our veterans. We knew we were on to something. It was so exciting. We've been doing this now for 15 years, and we can tell you it will keep going for many more years. But we have had a 3-day celebration every third year. And that is pretty amazing because we started out, we had 5 speakers, and the last year we had 28 featured speakers. And all together, and then the other 2 years, we have a breakfast where we have at least 2 featured speakers. I think that we have had a wealth of history being told at our Through the Veteran's Eye, a Salute during the Distinguished Speaker Series. We have had classified information that was only allowed to be told after 50 years. I can tell you that the Speaker Series has been just so interesting to many generations because people don't tell these stories or relay these histories to their family. Some of them are kind of brutal, but some of them are truly heartwarming. And it's really amazing that we have had 208 people come forward with these stories. That has wonderful displays from like the different businesses around Meadville that participated and helped with the efforts. And we really think that those stories are so important. You know, in this age of media, we don't get all that, you know. And the pictures, we have letters that were, you know, handwritten letters home that were actually censored. And when you look at that paper is so fine in how they censored anything that had to do with where they could give away a location. We've had like a speaker that their brother was lost, that he was MIA'd somewhere, and they couldn't, his whole unit, and his sister was a nurse overseas too, and they figured out where he was, and they were able to locate him, and he actually had the opportunity to go find his own brother. I mean, when will that ever happen again? I think there's a lot of our veterans that didn't come home, and our guys always remind us that, the steering committee. We do this because they didn't come home, and we want to thank them and salute them and let their families also know those stories. It's a lot of preparation, but we get so much joy out of it from all our veterans, and you know, the opportunity to say thank you. I mean, we don't say it enough, so this is a way that the whole community of Meadville participates.
I'm John Robb. I live in Meadville. I moved here from Philadelphia in 1955. I'm a retired dentist and long since retired now, but still enjoy living in Meadville. When you've been in the military, it's with you all your lifetime. And this organization that we have at Active Aging. We remember the people who didn't come back. And it's, as I said, it's something that never leaves you. On Pearl Harbor Day was Sunday, December 7th, 1941. And I was 11th grade. The next day, Monday in school, all the guys were afraid the war would be over before we would have a chance to get in and do our thing. I was in the infantry. I remember when I first went in the service, I was right out of high school. I didn't have any work experience, and my father had a pack of beagles, thoroughbred beagles. We used them to hunt with, but we also used them to take them to field trials. So I was all set to go to Colorado to train war dogs. This sounded great to me. And then they said, no, wait, there's a program here that you have an adequate score on your exam. There's a program here, Army Specialized Training Program. You'll go to you'll take infantry basic training, you'll go to college, and then you'll serve time in the service. So this sounded great to me. I was a Depression kid. This sounded great to me. And I took basic infantry training, and then they invaded Normandy. And that was the end of that program, so I joined an infantry organization or infantry division. Served in Camp Atterbury, Indiana, went over to Scotland and then to England for a month for training, and then went into at that point the war was up on the border of Germany, and our division went to on the Belgian border, right on the German border, in early December of '44. And it was a very quiet front, and we were so very lucky to be taken to a very quiet front, they told us. And then the Germans hit on December 16th, the start of the Battle of the Bulge, and we were hit, and we were in dire circumstances. We fought for 3 days, tried to capture the town of Schonberg, Belgium, and this is where I was captured. And I was in a POW camp for 3.5 months. I did get liberated by the 44th Infantry Division. April 2nd, the war in Europe ended May 8th. So that was my time in Europe. Well, we liked Meadville. I know when we retired, a lot of our friends said, are you going to move to Florida or South Carolina or whatever? And we know, we like it here. My wife was an Erie girl. I was from Westmoreland County. Vandergrift was my town, 30 miles northeast of Pittsburgh. And so Meadville is a good town with Allegheny College and a lot of good things. We have some tough winters, but spring comes later.
My name is Barb Lawlier, and my story is about Meadville, Pennsylvania, and our sister city of Fimes, France. My grandfather was in World War I, and he was a member of the Air Service Mechanics from Maine, and he was in Fimes, France. And at the same time, Meadville's military, Company B of the 112th Regiment, was in Fimes, France. And they actually liberated the city from 1,000 Germans that had occupied the city. While they were there, the bridge that connected the city was destroyed, and Meadville and Pennsylvania helped to rebuild the bridge about 10 years later. The military in Meadville had a big parade. I believe that it was 1918, and they marched up and down Chestnut Street, and then they went into formation in Diamond Park. Meadville and Pennsylvania helped to rebuild the bridge. I believe that we had architects that helped to design it. They accepted our design, and they named it the American Memorial Bridge. and the road that leads to the bridge is called the Promenade de Meadville. During World War II, the city was occupied again. They had a lot of damage to their city again. And after World War II, my grandfather and other members of the community supplied them with 3 carloads full of food and supplies and sent them over. And I thought that was pretty remarkable, considering that during World War II, people in Meadville were recycling grease for explosives and recycling tin cans for the war effort, and they had rations. You know, they didn't have everything, and yet they supplied them with what they needed. They felt that that was important. One of the things that they did was they gave us a replica of their coat of arms that was given to them in 1226, and it states that Pfeim is a city free to rule itself by itself. It's very nice. It's in the mayor's office right now. I'm not sure where they're going to put it. They've come here on different occasions. Their mayor has come here. Our mayor has gone there. Their mayor came here and dedicated a plaque in Diamond Park in honor of our efforts towards their freedom. And the pathway in front of the plaque is called the Boulevard de Pfeim. I think it's important because it stresses the fact that people of Meadville are very giving and very concerned about other people and not just ourselves, and that we do sacrifice a lot, not just the people that are in the military, but people that stay at home do also.
My name is Stephen G. Folmar. I was born and raised in the 5th Ward area of Meadville. I've been back a few times, left and then come back a few times. I have a lot of friends in this area. It's an area that's very rich with history. It's been a depressed area over the past few years. A lot of the industry has up and left. The Talon facility, the Avtex facility has left, but it's a strong blue-collar area, and I think that's one of the things that keeps it going. 5th Ward actually, it's the last district in Meadville. It actually was its own municipality around the turn of the century. It was called Valonia. There was a racetrack over where the Thompson Lincoln Avenue softball fields are today. There was a dance hall over there. I don't know how true it is, but I've heard that the Meadville football team played over there for a period. It was very tight-knit. It has a rough and tumble history. Growing up, I don't want to say it was gangs or anything like that, but there was a lot of fighting going on over in 5th Ward. It was a very protected area. If you were a 5th Warder, you were protected by other 5th Warders. Even, as I said, when I was a kid, there were kids that couldn't come to my birthday parties because I lived in 5th Ward. And it had a history that people remembered. I don't think it's near, in this day and age, it's near as rough or anything as it was before, but still very blue collar. A lot of the people that are in 5th Ward have been there for years. Like I said, there's a lot of history. The Keystone Hose fire hall over there, which is no longer, I was a volunteer fireman there. When it was Valonia, it was their own fire department. A lot of the businesses over there, Dillerman's Auto Body has been there for years and years. The Lincoln Avenue Grocer has changed hands, but it's been there for years. The old Palmero's Dairy Aisle, which is now the Stevens Dairy Aisle. All those businesses have been there for 50 or 60 years at least. The 5th Ward is in a floodplain. It's a very low-lying area. It's right between French Creek and the Cussawagga Creek. And in the spring, when the thaws come, when the water's coming down, it floods from both areas. Then also at that time period, the ice used to break up and it would build up at bends in the river or the creeks, and those areas would flood pretty bad. 1959 is one of the worst. It affected a good part of Meadville, but especially 5th Ward. Most of those people had to be evacuated out of there. I've seen many pictures. Most families over there have pictures of the water, up close to the second story windows. Now, it does not, because of the way the damming procedures and everything work now, it does not flood as bad, but it still does flood. There's areas over there. I have pictures of my neighbors boating down our street. He actually has a boat tied to the tree out back because he never knows when he'll need it. And this is just as recently as 5 or 10 years ago. Funny story from when I was a kid, I used to walk down to my babysitter's when my mother went to work. And I was coming home late one evening. And to show you, it didn't even take rains or anything. It could just be the thaw. It was a beautiful night and I'm walking home and I'm passing the 3rd District School and I hear waves. And there's no water anywhere near there. And I'm thinking, now, why am I hearing waves? And as I looked out, you could see the moon reflecting off the water. The entire field had flooded. It was like a huge lake. And you know, most of the basements over there are dirt floors, so the water just comes right up through them. One time, the fire department came over. This is probably 10 or 15 years. Well, I got to remember my age. Probably 20, 25 years ago, we almost lost a fireman in our basement. He went down to set the sump pump and started to sink in the soft floor. He had to grab a beam in the basement to keep from sinking too far. So the flooding is always an issue over there. I believe now that you're not allowed to build houses with basements. If you build in the Fifth Ward area, you're no longer allowed to build basements because they'll flood. So the measures have helped since 1959, and as bad as it was, but it's still, you know, it's just a natural occurrence that it often will flood over there.
My name's Kathy Hansen, and I've been working at Hillside Home, actually Westbury Hillside Home, for the last 5 years as the administrator. I'm a registered nurse and a nursing home administrator, and I'm privileged to be able to work down at the Westbury Hillside Home. It rests right across from the Meadville Medical Center, Spencer. And as you go up Williamson Road, it is a big 3-story building. In 1890, I understand there was a real need for an orphanage. The Western Pennsylvania Children's Society was formed from the auxiliary, and Hiram Poulter Whiting and his wife helped create the auxiliary and to care for the children. And so a few years later, they bought a home, and so was really underway taking care of orphans. In 1908, it was a piece of property was given to the society from Heidi Cooper, and I believe it was $21,000. They built a mansion there, and that was used as an orphanage and care for elderly women. And I understand there were some men there too. In 1956, a woman by the name of Catherine Tarr, and she was quite prevalent in Meadville, and we have a beautiful portrait of her. She gave money for the renovation of this home. An elevator was put in, and at that time it stopped being a home for an orphanage. It stopped, and it was cared for, elderly women were cared for at that time. In 1998, then Westbury United Methodist Community became affiliated with this home, and has really helped preserve it by new windows and new roofing. Our place is like the bed and breakfast, or the jewel of Meadville. It's so unknown, and it's such a beautiful home. I think there's so many great things in Meadville that are small town and historical that many other cities have just lost.
Westbury is a continuing care retirement community, which means we offer independent living, enhanced living and personal care, and skilled care all on our 110-acre campus. We also have a at-home health agency, so we also support people in the community. We employ close to 400 people on our campus, and there are about 400 residents that live throughout the levels of care that are offered on our campus. Westbury was founded by the Western Conference of the United Methodist Church in 1918. Basically, they saw a need for what would have been called a nursing home back in that time. And a local farmer named Hyatt Cribbs offered up his farm, basically, for that home. Residents at that time actually worked on the farm. They basically grew their food. It was kind of a communal living situation. During the 1940s, basically the fire safety laws were changing, and that kind of group home was considered a fire hazard. So the conference was looking for a new place for their nursing home, and a farmer in Meadville offered up his part of his land on the northern edge of Meadville, what was formerly called Green Acres, to the conference. And in 1948, they broke ground on what was going to be called the Methodist Home for the Aging. First residents moved in 1952, and for the next 15 years, that was the only facility on our campus. In the late 1960s, the need for a hospital for 24-hour care for seniors was needed, and the conference built a geriatric hospital, broke ground in 1968 and opened in 1970. That is now Grace Health Center, which is still on our campus and actually just went through a 10-year renovation process of its own, going from the 1970s style infirmary setting to a more neighborhood-like setting, more of a home feel. So in the 1970s is when we expanded to an independent living program. Today we have 64 homes on our campus and 16 apartments, which are in 3 different apartment buildings. During that time, a lot of different ministers started moving into our independent living program. As that grew, some more prominent Meadville people started to live there too. Governor Ray Schaefer, who's well known around Meadville, was one of our residents for a number of years. A lot of the local Methodist ministers that people would know from all the different charges that they were at also lived on our campus. All the time when I'm out with the Westbury marketing materials throughout the area, I have people asking me if so-and-so is still living there, and I actually do bring back some messages to them and tell them that so-and-so in Erie said hi to Reverend Jack Spencer's a good one, because he worked all over the region, and he's lived on our campus for a while. We have a connection to almost everybody in Meadville in some way, whether they work for us, whether they lived on a campus. Westbury gives lifelong Meadville residents the opportunity to stay in their community.
My name is Amara Geffen, and I'm doing my story on the Meadville Sign Art Project, which is called Read Between the Signs. The history of Read Between the Signs project is actually pretty interesting, and it spans more than 10 years. It started with a group of Allegheny students who wanted to green the gateway into Meadville. Before the fence project was put up, that there's just simply a chain link fence behind it. It had 12 inches of barbed wire at the top, and you could see right into that storage lot. And we were working with students on how to use art and the environment to change the way a community looks and feels, and also to shape relationships among people. And so the students came up with the idea of creating a living fence that would screen that whole thing. And that was a beautiful idea. We pursued it. It didn't quite work, but in the process, we built a great relationship with the folks at the PennDOT site in Meadville. Jack Mulkey was the manager. Jack approached us as a result of that Greening the Gateway project. He approached us and said, hey, we just redid our parking lot, and we want something there that will help people identify. Everybody looks at that lot and they don't know that it's even PennDOT. So I was teaching a class at the time, my Art and Environment Foundations course, and I broke the class into teams of 3 students, and they all had to come up with a conceptual proposal. We inventoried the site. They had to include which materials from a site they were proposing we work with. They had to do drawings and models. And then we gathered in representatives from Vernon Township and from the city of Meadville and from PennDOT. And the students presented their projects, and then everyone there, the officials there, kind of ranked what they liked. We started with the flowers. And my feeling was that we didn't want something low on the ground. They needed something to balance that intersection. There's all this tall stuff all around that intersection. So we came up with the idea of flowers. They really liked the idea of making flowers from road signs. So I worked with a team of 6 or 7 students and their welder. We worked in their shop and we fabricated this whole series of flowers. We were there for 9 weeks, every day, Monday through Friday. And so a lot of good relationships were built. So while we were working with the signs, it just occurred to me, well, we're making these 3-dimensional objects. Why couldn't we make a relief and do a long painting? Kind of, and I thought of a project that is in California. It's a mural that was done on an underpass area, concrete, and it's 1,200 running feet, and it unfolded over time. And I just thought we could do a similar project to that. So I went and talked to Jack Mulkey, and he said, yeah. And I said, well, I'm not even really sure I want to take this on because it's going to be like 10 years to do this. It's going to be a lot of work. And he said, well, you could just start and see what you think. We got thousands, literally thousands of drawings from children, elementary through high school age. We came up with some basic criteria that would allow us to evolve the project and not have it feel like this was this year and here's a different thing for the next year, etc. So there would be a sense of continuity. And we also, we used a kind of mounding form, that sort of element repeated, so there would be a sense of motion as opposed to, again, stop-start. I moved to Meadville in 1982, so that's almost 33 years ago. And I didn't really think I was going to stay in Meadville, but life unfolds, and I have this amazing job at Allegheny. I get to work with great students, and I have wonderful colleagues, and so life unfolds, and you find your place, and this is a good community. There's so many benefits to being in this community.
My name is Barbara Barrickman. I am a resident of Blooming Valley, a little town located about 7 miles east of Meadville. I have been active in Master Gardeners, which relates to the park. I think the most important part of the park is for people's enjoyment. It is a burst of color as you leave and enter the city of Meadville. Originally, before all the park became as famous as it has in the last few years, the only thing you saw as you were entering the city was a sewage plant. And that has been taken care of since this. And it's kind of nice to have something that gives you a little bit of joy and you look forward to. Probably in the area of 20 years ago, Penn State Master Gardeners took over the maintaining of the park's ribbon, so to speak, which is a flower area, along with 3 beds of flowers that were circles. And Paula Rudler and I kind of got involved in that about 10 years ago. We're responsible for the maintenance of the flowers of the garden, for ordering the flowers each year, which we'll be doing shortly. Also, we are in charge of getting help to do that. It takes a lot of help. I don't think as you see the garden, you realize that that is the portion of the garden you enjoy. That's really not the main working force, which includes the plastic, which has to be maintained under the flowers, the underlying water system, which we put in every year, and then of course the planting and the tearing down of the gardens. The first year that we took over the garden, we thought nothing to it. So we get ourselves organized, we get down there with our committee, and we have plants which you may be familiar with them or not. They're called a vinca. They are a plant that probably at its greatest height turns into 3 inches. We probably planted 3,500 vinca plants. 3 weeks later, people were stopping us and saying, when are you going to plant the garden? I thought you took over the garden. A panic call to the Western Pennsylvania Conservancy yielded us about 2,000 Rebeckia. If you're familiar with a Rebeckia, it is a large black-eyed Susan, a beautiful plant. But after planting 3,500 plants and then having to replant 2,500 more, we were not happy campers. We also have had, and I have to laugh at this, some funny experiences. Our water line consists of a plastic line which we put under the mulch, or on top of the mulch. And every once in a while, we don't get it quite right, and it develops a hole. I got not a panic call, but I got a call the other day from one of our friends that works for the city, and they guys kind of look after us and then girls. And she said, "Hey, we have a problem." I said, "What?" She said, "We have water running down around 322. And I said, I was watching my grandchildren, and I said, "Well, don't worry." I said, "I'll put the kids in the car and be right in." No, she said, "Don't." She said, "The ground is wet enough." She said, "We'll go down and turn the water line off for you." So it was just, funny things like this happen, but you learn these things by experience. You really do. And we've had the water line leak in the past, and the thing that we've been very happy about is the community has always been there, standing with us if we need anything. Our community gives us food. We have people a gentleman that had owned Kentucky Fried Chicken. He would come down as we were planning. "How many people do you have?" he'd say. And we'd tell him, "I'll be back in an hour. We'll get ready to eat." Just community things like that. And we've had very, very good working relationships with the Western Pennsylvania Conservancy. Every once in a while, like the wrong flowers that came this year, we call them, and they bend over backwards to help us. I think with things as they are in any community, I think it gives it a splash of color. I think people think, "Now, doesn't that look nice?" And kind of takes your mind off of some of the other things that are going on. It's just a splash of color. It is not a picking garden by far. It is just an enjoyment garden for the community. And it is certainly an enjoyment garden for the people to put it in. It's brought the community people. We work as a group. We have as many community people helping as we do master gardeners. And I think it's been rewarding for everyone just to see it grow, and everybody keeps an eye on it. And you walk down the street and the people say to you, "Hey, that garden's looking good," or, "Oh my, what did you do to that garden this year?" So that's sort of how we do things. We take suggestions. If anyone says, "I love these state fair zinnias," we'll try them another year. We're not against kind of experimenting. And a couple experiments have not gone too well, but the majority of them have gone quite well. And I think I think that we get as much out of that garden as the people that go past. And we've had some sound-offs in the paper that people are happy about it. It's nice to see a complaining article, and right behind it a little blurb of, "Oh, how nice that garden looks, how we enjoy that." But as I said, it's a community effort. Everyone is involved. We're just the people to put the finishing touches on it.
My name is Alice Scholander. I'm the market master of the Meadville Market House. I've lived in Meadville for 16 years. It's a really unique community in a lot of ways. You're an urban area, but at the same time, you have some rural aspects, and that's what makes this town, one of the things that makes this town great. Well, the Market House was built in 1870. And of course, if you remember back to 1870, that's where horses and buggies came, and people would come in the morning, they'd take lanterns out and they'd harvest their produce and come down here in a horse and buggy and park their horses in the livery stable across the street, and then just start to sell their produce right there at the Market House. When the Market House began, not only was produce sold there and artisan crafts, there were actually several butcher shops inside the Market House. And this is in the time where butchers wore aprons, white aprons, and bowler hats, and it was just a really cool place to go and buy your meats and your eggs and your chickens and all those kind of things. If you think back to butcher shops back at the turn of the century, it was quite different than what you would expect in a market house today. The scale of the market is completely different than what you would see in Philadelphia. The market that you see in Philadelphia most commonly is the Reading Terminal Market, which is probably about 20 times the size of the Market House, yet it still has those really quaint touches and things like that that make that market, as soon as you walk in, you feel like you're at home. It's that kind of building. It has a sensibility to it that's really unique. Well, we have several people that I know are in their 90s, and they come in and talk about the first time they came to market with their grandmother and bought their first puppy there. Or they bought baby chicks and then they raised the chicks, and they tell stories about, things that happen with the chicks and things like that. And it seems like every week there's another very unique story that someone tells. I was just talking to someone the other day who used to walk to the market with his grandmother. He's probably about 85 years old now, and they still had the horses and buggies. And he talked about the people unhitching their horses and taking them across the street, and how he loves this market. And he doesn't know what would happen to him, if that market wasn't there, because this is his home base. He walks there every morning and comes down and has a cup of coffee, and this is home to a lot of people in this town. It's really that home base that is the heart of the city of Meadville. Well, we have, right now in the market, there's 80 different vendors. Things are a little different than back in the day. I'm used to markets when I was a kid where there was sawdust on the floor. You can't do that anymore. But we have about 30 different produce vendors out on the outside. There's an old canopy on the outside, and they get to sell their produce in there. Inside, we have artists and crafters that do some really unique things like ceramics and metal goods and hand embroidered products and quilting and things like that. We sell all local meats in there, but it's a lot different than when the butcher shops were there. Now we sell everything frozen because, of course, the laws are a little bit different than they were in 1870. I really feel that Meadville is like us, being from Philadelphia, it's like a neighborhood. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody's very friendly. And the fall in Meadville is absolutely magical. We have a lot of old sugar maples. You can walk down the street and kick the leaves. It's just an incredible town and very friendly, and everybody helps everybody out. And that is just unique in this time, in this day and age. And that's what Meadville's all about. It's about neighborhoods and neighbors helping each other.
My name's Samantha Travis. I'm on a committee to save the Tar Mansion. I'm passionate about that because it's on Diamond Park in Meadville. It's part of Meadville's history, and it's in the hub of Meadville's history, Diamond Park, right in the middle of a historic district. I think there was some question for a time that we would lose the house to an addition to the courthouse, and that was the catalyst for us trying to save it, was just to save it from being torn down. But now that's turned into even more. Now this committee, which is part of the Historical Society of Crawford County, is trying to buy it and to restore it. The mansion's definitely unique. It is a part of the oil history of Crawford County. It was built by people from the Oil Creek area, James and Elizabeth Tarr, who struck oil on their farm in the Oil Creek area. And with the money that they earned from that, they built this magnificent home on Diamond Park in Meadville. That was built in 1867. It's actually built in an Italianate style, and is a 3-story brick home. It's a double house, so it is 2 mirrored images on the north and the south sides. The Tarrs lived on the north side of it and had the south side saved for other family members. Then, after the house is built in 1867, James dies in 1870 and Elizabeth dies in 1871. They left the home to Elizabeth's daughters, who lived in each, they had 2 daughters that lived in each half. The house remained a one-family dwelling until the 1950s, when it was sold to a couple of different families. It was in the hands of the Maselli family for a time and is currently owned by the Sternbys at this time. So the Historical Society at this time is hoping to be able to purchase the home and restore the home. So I've lived in Meadville for 6 years, since 2008. In that time, I have taken the opportunity to learn about the history of Meadville. And I think when a person learns about the history of their community, they are tied to that community. You suddenly start to love the community. You look around and you know the stories because you read about them. And it just adds layers to a community. So all of that adds to the character of who we are today. That's why I'm a part of this committee and why I'm passionate about making people aware of the history of Meadville.
I'm Cheryl Wiederspan, and I'm an employee of the Crawford County Historical Society as a tour guide for the Baldwin-Reynolds House Museum and Dr. Mosier's office. Dr. and Mrs. Mosier lived in Little's Corners, which is a little crossroad community, just a cluster of houses about 10 miles from Meadville. And he was the doctor on call for the whole township and community. And he practiced from the time he graduated from medical school, which was 1883. He graduated from a medical school in Vermont, and bought an already existing practice from another doctor who was retiring, and set up his own practice there beside his house in Little's Corners in a very little building, very small, little tiny building with no electric and no water, and started practice there and practiced for well over 50 years in that little building. Doctors back then were everything. There weren't specialists, there weren't surgeons and eye doctors and dentists. He was the dentist. His dental tools are in his little doctor's office in a drawer. And interestingly enough, there are no tools for repairing or filling teeth. It's just pulling teeth is the common procedure if you had a toothache. He was the pediatrician. He was the eye doctor. The eye chart is still in his doctor's office. He was the obstetrician. He delivered over 2,300 babies in his practice, which comes out to about one a week during 50-some years. And he did everything. He did it all. He even probably treated animals along the way when needed. The office was, like I said, beside his house in Little's Corners, and the doctor passed away from natural causes in October of 1938. And when the doctor passed away, his family closed the door on the office and virtually never went back in the building. The calendar page from that day, from that month, is still hanging in his office, and they have marked down the day he died, and 2 days later was the funeral, and it's still hanging there. His mail that was delivered that day is unopened on his desk, and the family really never went back in the office. It was inherited by his son and then the doctor's grandson. The doctor's grandson in the 1970s donated it to the Crawford County Historical Society. And the Historical Society, seeing what a time capsule it is in perfect preservation, decided to move it to the grounds they already owned here at the Baldwin-Reynolds House Museum and set it up as part of the tour. When you tour the house, you can also go to the bluff above the mansion and tour the doctor's office. And it's really a 1938 time capsule. All of his tools and records and books are all just where he left them when he died. There's a nickel-plated cook stove or wood stove there, heating stove that's there. The wood, firewood in the wood box in the waiting room is the same wood that was in the doctor's office when he passed away. He probably split it himself. The exam table chair is there. It cranks down to go flat for an operating table when he needs to do emergency operations, surgery. His desk is there with his Gray's Anatomy books and his medical books from college. His desk is set up with his inkwell and everything. His safe is there containing important papers. His receipts are in a basket. His ledger is there, and it records things like house calls were $1.50 and office calls were about 50 cents, but often he didn't get paid in money because the families didn't have money, but yet they needed treatment. So he was paid in things like 2 quarts of blackberries or 2 heads of cabbage or a chicken or a load of hay, which presumably went to feed his horse that he did office calls with. And whatever the family could afford was what he accepted. His pharmacy is still there. All the bottles, all the glass bottles with cork tops, are lined up in the pharmacy, and there's also a little resident in the pharmacy. His skeleton from medical school is hanging there, which helped him make diagnoses and understand how to set broken bones and things like that. There's a little wash basin that he washed his hands in, a bowl and pitcher. No running water, but a bowl and pitcher that he would pour water into and wash his hands before he did surgery. And it's just a time capsule. You're walking back into the sights and sounds and even the smells of 1938.
Oh, I'm Sarah Wolford. I'm the artistic director at the Academy Theater. I was a theater major at the University of Pittsburgh and kind of bowed out of theater for a while after I graduated, but I heard that the Academy was looking for an artistic director and applied for the position. Was lucky enough to get it. So that's what brought me to Meadville. I've been here for about a year. Well, it was built in 1885 by Ernest Hempstead. He wanted the town of Meadville to have a palace of amusement, I believe he called it. So he teamed up with an architect named J.M. Wood, who was kind of a big deal as far as designing theaters at that time. And they brought him in and he built the place. It was originally an opera house, then they did vaudeville, and it originally, for a while, was a movie theater in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. It closed down for a few years. And then in 1989, the Friends of the Academy Theater was established and they decided to renovate the building. A lot of people would remember it as the movie theater. People have told me they remember going there as teenagers to see movies in the 70s, like when Star Wars first came out. And we have a lot of people stop in during the day when the box office is open to look around because they remember sitting up in the balcony with their boyfriend or girlfriend, things like that when they went on dates. So movie theater is probably what most people remember being there. Well, a lot of people claim that it's haunted. I spend a lot of time alone in a dark building, so I haven't seen anything, but a lot of people think that Ernest Hempstead is still there. For all of the shows that we do, they save a seat for him in our upper balcony, and one of the box office managers used to go up and put a program on his seat for him every time. It's an old building. And we have a lot of bats that live up in our fly rail above the stage. So sometimes during performances, the bats will come out and fly around in the balcony. So people think that's Ernest Hempstead a lot of the time. The guy that shovels our sidewalk in the winter told me that he was out there shoveling one morning, and when he looked through the lobby doors, he could see a man and woman in kind of Victorian dress standing outside the box office, so he thought that was Ernest too. We have a suit of armor we keep in one of the windows in the front of the building, and we nicknamed him Sir Ernie. So he's kind of like our little mascot. He's traveled around town to different businesses and things to hang out for a while, but people always claim when they're alone in the actual theater space that they think Ernest is there sometimes. Well, as I said, 1989, Friends of the Academy Theater was established. It was a group of citizens who didn't want to see the building fall to ruin. They had to do a lot of renovations. They brought people in to renovate everything back to its original. We have the original proscenium around our stage. We used to have a lot of the original seats, a lot of the woodwork in the walls and in the ceiling was all redone because they didn't want to see it disappear completely. I think it was 1991 or 1992 they finally did their first show after reopening, but 2014-15, that season for us is officially our 25th year since we reopened. Next year will be the 130th year of the Academy since the 1885 original opening. And so we're planning on doing some classic shows that will kind of showcase the things that we've done over the years there.
I'm Chris Newsback. I'm the Meadville Area Recreation Complex Operations Manager. I've been there for 30 years, and it's a fantastic job. My heart and soul is in it, like so many other people in this town in their positions that they hold. The Mark has been there for 38 years. It started with the story of some people sitting around a picnic table and discussing that we needed to have a public pool in our town because unfortunately there were a lot of drownings because we have a lot of bodies of water and we have French Creek that goes through our town. So they sat around a picnic table for a couple of years. They talked about it. Donna Lang was one of the ones involved, and so was Kit Lang. And Kit was the one that was pushing, along with other people, Mrs. Davies because of the drownings. And as they got into the project, that they then had the school district came and said to them, you know, if you enclose that pool, we will use it in the wintertime and you could have a year-round pool. So what they did is, they talked and they said, okay, we will enclose that pool. And they brought over their high school team and they brought over their Learn to Swim program. So every child that was in 4th grade had the opportunity to learn how to swim, which fit right into the reasoning why the facility was built originally. Then they had Donna Lang come, and there were a group of people that used to go down to the Greenville Ice Arena, and they said, well, if you build an ice arena, we'll be able to enjoy the ice arena there. Plus there's a lot of people that would like to play hockey and do figure skating and that. So they decided, I was told at the 11th hour, that they would go ahead and build the ice arena, which they did. And originally the facility, when it was originally built, obviously it was enclosed, but it had a roof over the ice arena that could be removed in the summertime. So it was an outdoor facility. It took 200 people to deflate it and then pull it and drag it over to lay it on the roof in the summertime. It was quite an ordeal. Then with the ice arena, they had started a indoor hockey program. Now it runs from September through March. And they had teams right away. They had a high school team. They did not have locker rooms at the time. So they dressed in the warming area, or they came dressed. They had a wonderful time, but it was considered an outdoor arena because it didn't have sidewalls up. So when in the spring, when it would be very warm and the sun would be shining, there would be areas on the ice arena that would melt. It did have a roof, and it did have a standing room only area where people could stand and watch the event or the ice hockey, what was ever going on. Before the ice rink was built, they used to flood Heidi Cooper Park, which is at the bottom of Neeson Hill and Grove Street, right across from Meadville Medical Center's outpatient hospital now. And on Friday and Saturday nights, they would have big, huge bonfires, and they would flood the tennis courts. There were 2 there, but of course, you get 100 children out on, the tennis courts, and you're packed in there, and you can't hardly move. And so they would have hot chocolate and things like that, and it was really nostalgic when you look back at it. Of course, when you're a child and you're participating in it, you're just having fun. You're not thinking of that. But it was really nice.
My name is Dave Johnson. I am the development director at Bethesda Children's Home, and I've been there for 13 years. Bethesda currently is a residential treatment facility for at-risk youth. Well, Bethesda was established in 1919 through the generosity of a gentleman by the name of Mr. William S. Wise. He was a Sacred Town resident, and he was an entrepreneur. He was involved in 4-H. He was involved in a lot of businesses. He was a farmer. He was well known throughout the state of Pennsylvania. He was involved in politics, and yet he didn't have any children or family of his own. And so he had this farm. It was 130 acres of property just north of Meadville. When he got to a point where he couldn't maintain the farm, he donated the property to what was then the Pittsburgh Synod of the Lutheran Church to establish an orphanage in Crawford County, Meadville, back in 1919. And the condition was that the Synod, the Pittsburgh Synod of the Lutheran Church, had to do that within 5 years. And they indeed established an orphanage right here in Meadville. Orphanages back in the day were primarily places where families could take their kids if there was tragedy or something of a situation going on within the home. There's evidence even today of some of the families that were dropped off at Bethesda that come back to visit Bethesda, and there might be 5, 6, 7 of them, and typically they're in their 80s or 90s, and it's kind of interesting to hear some of the stories. The one that comes to my mind is the Estes family. There were, I think, 7 of those folks that were all at Bethesda, sisters and brothers, and they have all been back to Bethesda at one time. In fact, the Meadville Tribune did a story on the whole family, how they sort of reunited back at Bethesda because they're all scattered throughout the country. But like I said, many of them are in their 80s and 90s now, and several of them have passed away since then. But they were all here together. I think there were 3 sisters and 3 or 4 brothers that were here at Bethesda. So that's one sort of interesting story. Kids would come to live with Bethesda. You know, they worked the farm. They helped to sustain the organization. They weren't thought of primarily as kids with mental health issues back then. They were just kids that didn't have a place to go. The orphans that I described really could have, and indeed lived at Bethesda for 18 years. Some of them were dropped off as babies, and they left when they graduated from high school. There's a gentleman that some folks might remember. His name was Don Stewart. He went to Sagertown High School. He was a basketball standout at Sagertown. He's now in his 70s. He lived here literally at Bethesda for 18 years. I grew up in Warren, so Meadville to me is very similar to Warren in that, you know, it's a small town, small city, but yet it has a lot to offer. Everybody knows your name, just like the song on Cheers. You know, it's a small-knit community, family oriented, where, you know, people are friendly, and it's just a nice place to live. It's a nice place to grow up. It's a nice place to work, and that's what I like about Meadville.
My name is Jill Dunlap, and I'm the Secretary Treasurer Zoning Officer for Westmead Township. Well, back at the turn of the century, so in the late 1800s, there was a dam put in and a lake put in that the Meadville Area Traction Company actually built and developed 35 acres worth of property that was located between Springs Road and Oak Grove Avenue today. But at the time, it was a way for the traction company to get people to use the trolley lines. So coming from Meadville, going out to Oakwood Park was a destination resort. Basically, what was at Oakwood Park back at the turn of the century was a trolley lines that came in. There was a pavilion, a big, huge dancing pavilion, 2 stories, that you know, brought people in for dancing and pleasure. Bowling alley. There was a shooting gallery that was located down there. Coca-Cola had some different bandstands. There was outdoor movies, a ball field. There was a lot going on. A lot of people brought kind of their picnics or, you know, visits with their families. It was kind of a destination, very similar to Conneaut Lake Park. At the time, Exposition Park was kind of competing for some of their business. The trolley lines had been extended also out to Conneaut Lake. So the demise of Oakwood Park was due to Conneaut Lake Park being more developed. Back in the height of its popularity, Oakwood Park, people would spend 5 cents per way. So they would spend 5 cents going out on the trolley lines, 5 cents going back. So for their 10 cents, they could actually go out and enjoy the park. But there's been documentation that sometimes in the height of the, say like the season, you know, the summer season, say a July 4th weekend, there was as many as 20,000 people that may attend. So they had trolleys that were running nonstop back and forth, and, you know, well into the night to bring people in and back and forth. So, well, now there's no lake. Tamarack Lake is kind of up a little bit further, but there's no Oakwood Lake, no Park Lake. But a lot of it is just kind of underbrush or just kind of some smaller trees that have grown up. But down further, the township had extended the road back in the 60s, so Oak Grove Avenue is now along the one side of the park, what was the old Oakwood Park, and where that road has been extended out, there is a ball field. We've got a couple of pavilions. We've got some different areas, you know, that are just cleared, but some nice oak trees, some different trees that are down there. Well, right now we're in the process of, we have an engineering firm hired that we're working on developing a plan for the park so that we can see where we want to go from here, what people want. We're looking for input, but we're coming up with some things that in the future would be obtainable. Some people have indicated they like to see some bathrooms down there, or you know, other pavilion facilities, or a walking trail. We've even, because of all this research we've done on the history, we'd like to also tie that into it so that maybe we could have some historic markers, or, you know, I don't see where we're going to develop the lake again, you know, but to actually kind of move forward and at least to document some of our history, that seems like a very doable thing.
My name is Alyssa Angelo, and I am the Crawford County Dairy Princess of 2014-2015, and I am doing my story on farming in Crawford County. My inspiration starts with my grandfather, as far as me being involved with agriculture and farming. He's definitely been a big inspiration for me doing what I do as Dairy Princess and being involved with the eighth generation dairy farm, and it's something to be extremely proud of, and I did this to make my grandfather proud. He's a big part of my life, and I know every day that it's funny to see him smile at me wearing a dress, because I've always been the one to wear the blue jeans and the boots in the family, and help him fix the tractors and stuff. And he got to go to Ag Progress Days this year, and it was definitely an exciting time for him. And it's nice to know that I could provide that opportunity for him with being Dairy Princess. And my mom was actually alternate Dairy Princess in '85 and '86, so it's definitely something that goes back into my family's history, and it's nice to be representing the dairy industry this year. I am currently very active in farming, especially with being Dairy Princess. I not only show my cows nationally with my grandfather and my Aunt Hazel, my Uncle Art, and my cousin Donald, but we also are very active in the dairy industry this year more than ever. We currently live on an 180-acre farm, and we actually do beef cows as well as replacement heifers for dairy. I started showing at a really young age. I had a cow halter in my hand at the age of 3 and have been doing 4-H ever since. Sadly, this is my last year in 4-H coming up, and it's definitely a bittersweet moment. I know that there are bigger and better things, but farming's all I've known as a kid, and it's definitely going to be different stepping out of the show barn and going into the college life, that's for sure. Farming has been a part of my life ever since I was a baby, and you can start 4-H at 8, and I definitely was starting a little bit ahead of everybody else. But in order to be the Dairy Princess for Crawford County, there are some qualifications that you need to meet in order to run. One being that you have to have a connection to the dairy industry, and mine was that my grandfather had an 8th generation dairy farm. You also have to have a speech that's 35 minutes long, and your target audience is adults, as well as a skit that is 35 minutes long, which your target audience is 5-year-olds and school children. I often do my skit for students in pre-K and kindergarten classes. They enjoy it, and it's something fun for them to learn about the dairy industry. And we're on the hunt for the 9 essential nutrients, and I have my camouflage on, and I have a Holstein costume and my little cow Bessie, and it's pretty great. They enjoy it a lot. So you have to have those, and then you go on, if you get Dairy Princess, you go to state pageant in Harrisburg, PA, which I just came back from. I competed. I didn't actually place, but Hannah Bannock, the Erie County Dairy Princess, was in the top 7, so congratulations to her on that. As being the Dairy Princess, there is a lot to go with it, more than I actually anticipated myself, surprisingly. Starting with the Crawford County Fair, that's our biggest week, and with soccer and everything else, it was a little hard to manage because we actually do a giant sundae, which serves 600 people, and that's amazing. So we do that, and we actually do a lot of radio promotions at the fair. We have the Hall of Fame, which honors farmers in our community, and we definitely do a lot of parades as Dairy Princess. I just came from one yesterday. It's a great experience, actually. I've never got to be in a parade. The Dairy Princess pageant was my first pageant I've ever really been in, so it's a little bit of a new experience. Put the high heels on and the dresses, but it's been great. You do a lot of things in your community with the state princesses as well. We did the Seawolves game, which was a blast and a half. It was great. I definitely think farming is an important thing to our community in Crawford County. I don't think a lot of people realize the effort that farmers put into everyday occurrences. With farming, you really don't have any sick days or weather cancellations. I actually did my speech for the pageant was why I farm, and it was all about why I personally love farming, why I do it, even though it's a lot harder than what people think. I would say my favorite thing about living in Crawford County would have to be the closeness of the farming communities and the community itself. Everybody's trying to help everybody out, and Crawford County may not be very big, but definitely you know that your neighbors have your back and they're watching out for you.
My name is Dr. Nancy Rung, and the story that I'm going to talk about is one that I wrote in 1995 or 96. It's called Library Rules. It's an event that happened in 1953 when I first moved from Sandy Lake to Meadville. And after a week of helping my grandmother put boxes away, dry dishes, etc., she said, okay, you can have the afternoon off, at which time I went to the library on my bicycle. And this is a true story, basically, but I took some poetic license and embellished it some. The story begins with me on Upper Chestnut Street, riding my bicycle to the Meadville Public Library, which is on the Diamond in Meadville. And I was given a note of the book that my grandmother wanted me to bring home. Every year, my grandmother and I read a book together, a good book together. And so she wrote a note, the directions on the library, and then she put on the other side what book I was to bring back. I got to the library. I was so proud that I found it, no problems. Remember I was 8 years old at this time. And I got to the library, and there is the librarian, and she has been important in my life, all of my life. And she was a very tall woman with pink glasses and red hair, and she wore a green suit mostly. I'm sure she had other clothes, but every time I saw her, she had this green suit on, had gold buttons, and she had brown shoes that she tippy-toed around the library in. And so I was told by her that I couldn't have the library card that day to take any books out. Well, I finally convinced her that I should be able to take the book out. And so she finally said, well, she wasn't that busy. It was right before the 4th of July, and she would give me the library card. And then the problem was my grandmother wanted me to get a book by Shakespeare, a play by Shakespeare, and it was The Merchant of Venice. Well, that wasn't a children's book, and I wasn't allowed to have it. So I finally convinced the librarian that I wanted this book, I needed this book, because my grandmother would probably have punished me if I came home without a book, because she would have thought I was too stupid to find the library or something. So I was concerned about that, and finally, conquered the problem of not being able to have the book, got home, and it turned out as a happy ending. Everything is interesting about Meadville. It's a college town, which makes it more intellectually possible than other towns. you know, just the people, and there's a difference in the way the people in Meadville, they're friendly, they're helpful, they're just a nice group of people. It's a big enough town, and it's a small enough town.
I'm Joshua Sheritz. I'm the director at the Baldwin-Reynolds House Museum. I've been here in some capacity for just short of 10 years, and I'm going to talk a little bit about today about both the museum and the gentleman who built it, U.S. Supreme Court Justice Henry Baldwin. Baldwin was, we'll say, for lack of a better way to put it, an eccentric. Born in 1780, served, clerked for the clerk of the U.S. Supreme Court, Alexander Dallas, when the court was still in Philadelphia. Was a district attorney in Crawford County, Pennsylvania, at a time where they handed him a set of law books and a horse and said, here's the western half of the state, it's all yours, have fun with it. Gave that up, became a U.S. congressman in Pittsburgh, was involved with the Missouri Compromise, and when Andrew Jackson was invading Spanish Florida, chasing after the Seminole Indian tribe, the U.S. Congress basically wanted Jackson's head on a platter, and he had invaded Spanish territory. Spain was threatening war. We had just gotten out of the War of 1812, and Henry Baldwin came up with this silly idea that what if we just buy Florida? And he and John Quincy Adams had decided, well, it's not going to hurt anything to at least pose the idea, and lo and behold, we purchased Florida. And with both their original idea and then congressional approval and congressional action. And it sort of saved Andrew Jackson's political careers. The Baldwin-Reynolds House was built in 1842 to 1843-ish. Baldwin was in his 60s. He was looking for a place to semi-retire. At that point in time, he had hoped to spend part of the year in Washington, D.C., serving on the bench of the Supreme Court, and part of the year when court wasn't in session, somewhere where he could finally put roots down. They had stayed with family and friends. At that point in time, the U.S. Supreme Court had a boarding house in Washington, D.C., where most of the justices stayed. Was sort of an attempt to make everyone look unified and warm and fuzzy. And Baldwin sort of thought, this is silly. These people I work with, I don't necessarily want to live with them 24/7, 365. So he had built this house here in Meadville. He had designed it after, there's no real architect, because he had designed it after a home that his son had owned in Nashville, Tennessee. Henry Baldwin Jr. was sent down to, quote-unquote, straighten him out to Baldwin's good friend Andrew Jackson. And he spent some time in Nashville. He ended up purchasing Andrew Jackson's home, Hunter Hill, when Andrew Jackson built the Hermitage, which is the museum that everyone goes to today to see Andrew Jackson's home. And Baldwin had gone down to visit his son at Hunter Hill and to visit his good friend Andrew Jackson. And staying down at Hunter Hill, Baldwin fell in love with the house. Wanted to build his home in Meadville, was sort of tossing around what he wanted for a home in Meadville, and decided he was going to recreate that house here. So this house was built and started in 1842, finished in 1843. Baldwin passed away in the spring of 1844. So they lived here about 8 months, and this was his dream home. This was, modeled after a Tennessee plantation. Not always necessarily the best when it comes to Pennsylvania winters, but we make do, and it's been here over 170 years. The first floor of the house has been modernized somewhat. When I say modernized, Baldwin's nephew, William Reynolds, who was involved with bringing the railroad through this region, had sort of Victorianized it, the black walnut woodwork and things like that people see when they first walk in. The second floor, however, is fairly standard to Baldwin in his time period. The tiger and curly maple, the painted pine plank floors. We do have some of Baldwin's original furniture. In fact, the couch we're sitting on was from their home in Washington, D.C., and then came up here to Meadville with it. In 1963, the last of the Reynolds family, which would have been the nephew's descendants of Henry Baldwin, had passed away, and the house went up for sale. It was on the market, and there were developers interested in tearing it down, because it was still a 3-acre site, even though some of the back property had been sold off years earlier. Tearing it down to build everything from a laundromat to a grocery store to a strip mall, you name it. And a few people in town most notably Lewis Walker III, owner of Talon Zipper Company at the time, and John Boehner and his wife Otelia, and they were the executors of the estate here, got together with the Historical Society and said, we have a U.S. Supreme Court Justice's house in northwestern Pennsylvania, and it's going to end up a laundromat. This can't happen. They had a few public meetings, and they decided we have to make some kind of effort to save this building. And Lewis Walker had put the money in, and the Historical Society said they would take the custody of the building, and the Crawford County Historical Society bought the house in December of 1963, and we've owned it for, this will be 51 years, and it's run as a house museum for that time, and we're still, continuing to restore the building and then re-restore the building as wear and tear over the decades. But we're rather pleased. We have an amazing collection here with U.S. Supreme Court items, presidential items, everything from dental tools that were used on George Washington by his personal physician, who was from Meadville, to a desk from one of the family's ancestors, one of the family that lived here's ancestors, from the U.S. House of Representatives, a U.S. congressman's desk from John Dick, who was from Meadville. So it's really sort of a magical and interesting place that we really have a lot of things that most people wouldn't expect to see in a small town museum or in a museum owned by a county historical society.
I'm Krista Batten, the Executive Director of the Meadville Western Crawford County Chamber of Commerce, and I'll talk to you about the Chamber and the Meadville community. The Meadville Western Crawford County Chamber of Commerce is the third oldest chamber in the United States. We were founded in 1807. We are currently housed in the Allegheny College Founders House on 908 Diamond Park. Right now, we currently have close to 450 chamber members, not only from Meadville, but from many surrounding communities as well. We have businesses from sales and restaurants and manufacturers. Of course, tool and die industry here is very large in the Meadville community. We have so many different variety of businesses. We have Accutech being one of the largest manufacturers, Channellock. This week, I know we're on the 5th generation there at Channellock of the DeArmond family, so they're a very, very proud member of the chamber. We have Armstrong Cable, another big chamber member here that's very community-minded and has been here for years. Allegheny College, we have several educational facilities here. Ainsworth, which was Dad's, which is grown and become Ainsworth Pet Nutrition, to Armstrong Cable. And then we're very strong with the small businesses. The small businesses that are 10 employees or under make up a large number of the chamber here in town as well, to the local restaurants, to travel agencies, to florists, we have fabulous restaurants here in town, and a couple breweries and a few wineries that are local as well. Entertainment, we have the Academy Theater, we have the Market House, which is great, different things that go on there as well. There's a lot of entertainment that is happening here, and I think we're a great destination. The Chamber holds many events, not only just for our chamber members. We hold several events for the community. In August is the Thunder in the City celebration, which brings tens of thousands of people to downtown Meadville. We block off the streets and several vendors come in town. A lot of the downtown merchants open their doors, longer hours, have specials. We bring in entertainment. We have Rusty Hanaway Memorial Bike Ride, a parade with several people that start in Vernon Township at Street Track and Trail, another one of our members, and we have a parade that brings several people into town for that memorial bike ride. And we have vendors on the street. We have all kinds of things that happen that weekend, and people sponsor the event, but it's a way to bring people into the community to see what we have and what is offered here. My favorite thing about Meadville is the community and the people that I've met, and everyone is so welcoming and supports each other, and you don't have that in every small community. Obviously there are always some small issues, but everyone seems to really support each other, from nonprofits to profit organizations to the schools, to it's just a great community, not only to live in, but be a part of and work in. So I'm just thrilled to be here.
My name is Eileen Mullen, and my story is about the St. Patrick's Day Parade here in Meadville. So the St. Patrick's Day Parade, the history of the St. Patrick's Day Parade is that it began in 1988, and my father, Jack Curtin, was a business owner downtown, and he and a friend, Mr. Kronfeld, who was a business owner downtown, decided that there was no St. Patrick's Day Parade, so that they would create one. And my father was from the Boston area. He was an Irish Catholic from the Boston area and couldn't believe there was no St. Patrick's Day Parade. So the two of them got together and decided to start their own parade. And they did that, and they decided to do it on St. Patrick's Day, which was in the middle of the week at 12 o'clock during a business day, and invited the whole community to come. And they were willing to walk down the street, whether or not anyone was behind them or whether or not anyone was on Chestnut Street to watch them. And so it was very successful. People came to watch, and there was people behind them, and I think it snowed that day, but it was a very successful St. Patrick's Day, and they had a great time. And my father, really, the vision of it was, he was a businessman. He wanted people to come downtown on a random day in March, but also to celebrate the upcoming spring. And he always said everybody is Irish on St. Patrick's Day, so to celebrate being Irish, even if only for one day. The very first one was probably very small. I mean, I recall it being very small. There was people out there lined up the street waiting for the parade to begin, and there was, several units and several people marching in the parade, and there was a band, and so but it wasn't very large. And it grew throughout the years. It really did grow every year to the point where sometimes if it's a nice, beautiful, sunny day, it's very, very large. There's probably close to 300 people in the parade, and probably close to 1,000 people watching the parade. And every year it seems to grow bigger. Of course, understanding that the beauty of this parade is that it's small. We laugh and say that, you could be done, the whole parade could be 20 minutes long, but that's the beauty of the parade. My father really wanted it to be a small parade with not a lot of, preparation. If you come at 11:15 around the diamond, there's no one there, and by 12 o'clock there's probably 200 people ready to walk down the street to be in the parade. So it's spontaneous, it's fun, it's very lighthearted, it's not a serious parade, and that's the beauty of it, and we want to keep it that way. I think the impact that the St. Patrick's Day Parade has in Meadville is, I'm not sure it brings thousands of people down to spend a lot of money that day, but I think it definitely does bring people downtown to spend money on St. Patrick's Day weekend. I think also it just speaks to the kind of people that live in Meadville. We all have a lot of spirit. A lot of people talked about the Irish spirit that my father brought to the community, and I think that is seen on that day. I think the community always embraces these kind of fun events that we have, and they support it. They support my family and myself. They support everybody involved with the parade, and all the events that we have throughout the year are really incredibly supported by all the people in the community. There's a lot of people volunteering in our community. There's a lot of people giving back, a lot of civic engagement, and I think that's really shows on a St. Patrick's Day in March, when it's been snowing and there's 7 inches of snow on the ground, and still people are lined up on the street with green on, ready for the parade to begin. And I think it shows our fun, our spontaneity, and our sense of community. My father passed away in 2004, and I guess the parade has become my legacy. My joke is that some people inherit money and some people inherit homes, and when my father passed away, I inherited a parade. So it's a wonderful thing to inherit, because I also inherited sort of this love of my hometown that my father had. He's not from the Meadville area, but you would not have known that upon meeting him. He loved Meadville, and Meadville loved him right back. And so when I inherited the parade, I also inherited that wonderful relationship with Meadville and that connection with my hometown. So I decided to take it over after he died, and there was a little support of maybe 6 or 7 members, the parade committee, and they were friends of my father's who loved him, who worked with him, a lot of people that were retiring or upon retirement, and they still help me, and they're very excited, and we have a great time every January, February, March, getting ready for the parade. And so it's been a wonderful thing. I think that the community's enjoyed the fact that the St. Patrick's Day has continued, the parade has continued, and I think it's something that, you know, even if I weren't here, I think someone would step up and continue this legacy that my father started.
My name is Mike Dallas, and I'm with the 150th Pennsylvania present-day reenactors. My wife and I and a lot of our people have reenacted for many years, and I'm going to have to take you back to the original Bucktails, who recruited down here at Diamond Park in August of 1862 in David Derrickson's office, who later became a member of the 150th as a fighting unit. And I guess what I'm going to tell you is, why did we pick the 150th Pennsylvania? In this area, it would be customary within a reenactment group to do or portray a group that actually came from their hometown. And at the time, the 83rd, and still is going on out at Erie, 111th and the 145th. It was like, well, everybody's on me, what do you want to do? And I says, well, the 150th, and that's how we picked the 150th Pennsylvania. What the present day group has done is, yes, we do reenactments. In the past, we did a lot of civic-minded stuff. We've gone ahead and actually go into schools and do school programs for kids. We've been down to senior center. As we are veterans, not all of us are veterans, but we did a lot of work with the vets, and what we have done in the past is we have replaced 600 cemetery marker stones that were not there, broken, busted, whatever the case was. Yes, we go to balls, we do all that stuff. The ladies do dress up and get pretty for us, and we have a good time doing it. Our group would be considered a family group. There are some groups that are, I would say, all male only. We seem to like the middle road, get the family involved, get the kids going with it, get mama going if you can. That's the way this group was set up when we set it up, and that's how we like it. One of our current projects that we've been working on is the restoration of the Piper Memorial down in Diamond Park. And I can tell you a little bit of a story about the Piper Memorial. Originally that was supposed to have been called the Sentinel, and the name was later changed to the Piper Memorial, and the story behind that was that Sam Piper was our color sergeant at Gettysburg, where he was killed on July 1st, 1863. And what we've gone ahead and did is, we are going to do this. We want to get it done. We want to get the statue cleaned, repointed, taken off, have them waxed. I was told that there are cracks on top of the statue. We want to get those repaired, and actually do, at one point when we get finished with it, actually do grand rededication for that.
In our world right now, we have a strong volunteer giving component to our society, and then we have a strong taking whatever is available component. And I always have felt very uncomfortable with that. And when I read Edgar Cahn's book about No More Throwaway People, the concept of reciprocity really hit me. And so then I put the book down for a couple years and picked it up again and said, you know, I really need to start one. And so I met up with a young woman from Allegheny College, and the two of us started the Meadville Time Trade. And we've got about 45 members right now, and we've exchanged about 250 hours. The services are wonderful because they are from such a wide scope. We have services from picking people up for errands or medical appointments, to designing rooms, to doing handyman or handywoman projects. There's also organic gardening help, baking, cooking, just to name a few. There's just so many. Right now we have probably 70 different services. I think the reciprocity makes it unique in that it is you can't be a member unless you give and take, because you have, in order to receive services, you have to have hours in your account and to pay for them in a way. It's a parallel economy. So in order to receive a service, you had to have given a service. And the focus is that everyone has something to give, and everyone's time is valuable. It's kind of a volunteer concept, but it's saying that even though you're a volunteer, your time is valuable, and it's worth something. And I think that really promotes that it prevents the burnout, volunteer burnout, which happens a lot, where people volunteer very extensively and then they just get burned out and they can't go any further and they drop out. This allows that. The message here is your time is valuable. Everybody has something to give. We have an orientation once a month, and the orientation includes giving a background of the time banking concept, and so that gives you a history of it and tells you a little bit about the core values, and also how you can join up for membership, and then how you can use the software that records your hours. And that's every month. We have that at the public library, and then every month we also have a potluck, and that is a time for members and potential members to get together and meet each other, because you're more prone to do services with people you know. And that's a wonderful time for people to meet other people in the community. And that's really a big part of this, is to start making available opportunities for people to get to know each other. And that has happened already. I love the fact that you can pretty much get involved in any aspect of it and be relevant. I mean, if you're interested in beautification of Meadville, you can connect with that committee or find out who's in charge of it, or start it yourself and be received. And I really like that about the smallness of the town, and they seem to be open to just if you've got an idea, they'll work with you. And it's really nice to have that feeling that they're, supporting ideas that are happening.
I'm Brian Williams, Calvary Baptist Christian Academy. I'm Director of Development. And our biggest event that we have every year is our annual Serve-a-thon. I instituted it 5 years ago when I first came to Calvary, and I first moved to Meadville, actually. It is a very special event. It is like a walk-a-thon, except every class goes out into the community and serves for the day. We have a special day set aside in May to do that. And they go to various places. And at the same time, families are asked to send out letters to get people to support the school. They don't send out letters to pay for students to go out to serve. We want to teach our students to serve. Every class from preschool all the way through 12th grade has a special place to go that day. We start with preschool, and for the last few years, preschool and kindergarten have done a program at school for senior citizens. We've had nursing homes come to it, but we're going to change it up a little bit. The preschoolers like to clean so much, so we're going to let them clean this year. And we're going to let kindergarten go out. Kindergarten, first, second, and third all go to various assisted care facilities in the community. Some will do programs, some will play games with the residents, and one of the students made the comment that every time they played a game with a resident, they lost. And the resident would beat them. And it makes it real good interaction with the students and the residents. Coming to 4th grade, we go to Hog Heaven, which is an animal rescue farm, and the students literally can't wait to get there. They are just looking forward so much to that, and what they get to do is really usually shovel manure around, but they love it. And in fact, they came back this year and they said, this sure beats going to a nursing home. And then when we go on up, 5th grade, we're looking to change theirs a little bit. They have actually gone to First District Elementary School in the past, and they've actually read to kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd graders Dr. Seuss books. 6th grade goes to the soup kitchen in Meadville. 7th grade goes to Edinburgh Camp. 8th grade, hospice house, and then they come back and have some kind of activity to do at school. Last year they made Red Cross emergency bags. 9th grade, they go to Stainbrook Park and clean up by Woodcock Dam, and then they came back and worked at Roach Park in the afternoon and cleaned up. And they actually were there while 3rd graders were having a recess time there, so they got to interact with each other, which they really enjoyed. 10th grade, they went out to Miracle Mountain Ranch on the other side of Spartansburg. 11th grade went down to Slippery Rock Baptist Camp, and then 12th grade. I have a parent that wants to go every year with 12th graders, even though he doesn't have a 12th grader, to Erie City Mission, because he enjoys it so much and enjoys the testimony of the people there. Well, the mission of High Point Baptist Academy has not changed in 47 years. It stayed the same. You know, people change, but the mission stays the same, and that's important. The mission is to educate students, number one, and we want to do that, to serve God and impact the world through biblical thought and action. So you take those 3 verbs, educate, serve, and impact, and we want to truly teach our students to serve. One thing that I really have appreciated about the Servathon in the recent years is the fact that first graders go to Juniper Village, but they went there not only on the Servathon day, they went there on Valentine's Day, then they went back on the Servathon day, then they went back because Juniper Village had a pizza party with them, and then the Juniper Village residents, about 10 of them, came to our Grandparent Day this year. So we're building a relationship with others in the community, and we want to let others in the community know that we are willing to serve. Community has been very supportive. In fact, if I would think about it, everyone that we talk to really likes the idea. And the reason I do like the Servathon is because it is so unique to anything everybody else is doing. But it does fit our mission statement. But we have sponsors that will sponsor it, and the last year we have had 2 sponsors to sponsor it for $1,000 or more. And the companies are very willing to help. Some of the places that we go to provide a meal for us, but some of the students, especially the younger students, only do it for half a day. So what the fast food places have been willing to do is to provide a lunch free for one class and their chaperones. And we've really appreciated that too. In fact, when I go to them, I will start to say what I'm going to tell them about, and they say, oh yes, we've done that before, we'll do it again.
I was born and raised on a farm in Cochranton, Pennsylvania, and that's where I went to school. In 1981, I began working at Peter's Heat Treating in Meadville, and shortly after that moved to Meadville here, and so I've been living in Meadville here for about 34 years, and I've been working at Peter's Heat Treat that entire time also. Blade Sports is an organization of folks that are related to the knife industry, interested in the knife industry in somehow, whether it be a knife maker or a heat treater or knife supplier or just a knife enthusiast. Blade Sports was started in 2005 as a way to promote the use of knives as tools, to educate the public about the use of knives, to enhance the abilities of the knife makers and everybody in that related industry, and how we could make improvements to our knives, and a way for us to have competitions to test our knives and also to have some fun doing that. To compete in a competition, you have to be a certified cutter. So basically that involves training in the safe use of a knife during the competition. Our knives are quite large, so and very, very sharp. So we need to make sure that the folks are safe with the knife when they're using it. They will go through a training session of a day of training with a couple of different instructors in technique and practice of doing the different cuts that we do. Typically a competition is about 10 to 12 different stations that we have, and some of those examples of what we cut are 2x4s on edge, hanging ropes of all sizes, rolling golf balls, rolling tennis balls, different things that may be on the top of a golf tee, such as a grape, so slicing a grape in half, slicing drinking straws, cutting water bottles, so all examples of that. And we will try to mix up the competition into what we call a combination of power cuts and finesse cuts. So that gives us the ability to test the knife through its entire range of uses during the competition. Competition will have, each different station will have points assigned depending on difficulty or the time it takes to make those cuts. And also, while the competitor is doing his cut, that is timed. So the winning score is a combination of the fastest time and the most points. I got involved with Blade Sports because of my relation to the knife industry as a knife heat treater. And one of my customers, his name is Dan Keffler, lives in Portland, Oregon at the moment. He was also, when I mentioned to him what I was doing with Blade Sports, he was very curious about that, and he got involved also As a sponsor of Blade Sports at Peters Heat Treating, we have the ability to also sponsor a cutter. So I recognized Dan's potential prowess at this whole Blade Sports competition and encouraged him to get involved and approached my boss about sponsoring him. So we did make an agreement, and we have been sponsoring Dan for about 5 years. He has continuously pushed his abilities to the point where he did 2 years ago win the world competition, and again repeated this past year in June of this year, and as champion also.
I'm Karen Cross from Child to Family Connections, and I started Child to Family Connections in 2002. I was worried about the kids in foster care that were sitting too long for adoption. It was a problem across the country, and so I wanted to work with the kids in foster care to see if we could find permanent homes for them. We do a number of fundraisers. One of our most recent and most beneficial in terms of fundraising was our third walkathon. We just had that at Diamond Park, which couldn't be more Meadville than Diamond Park. And our transition kids and our individuals in intellectual disabilities all chipped in and worked together. We had raffles and food, and there was a disc jockey, so there was lots of dancing happening. There was some walking as well. Let's see, and they did crafts. A number of our people designed their own crafts, and then we're selling them at the market or at the Diamond Park to raise money. So altogether, we had over 60 sponsors, which was great. They donated money and T-shirts and items for the raffle, and we raised over $3,000, which will then be used for a number of activities, especially for the intellectual disability project. They will go on trips to, for example, Pittsburgh or Waldameer or places of interest. They all choose where they want to go, and it raises money for things for them to do during the day. Meadville's incredible. I mean, people just step up all the time, ask what we need, ask how they can help. When I was looking for finding things for these 6 apartments, I mean, imagine having 6 empty apartments that you suddenly have to furnish and provide. People just came out of everywhere. I've got dishes, I've got an old sofa, I have this, I have that, and it was just so great. And look at over 60 people and agencies and businesses all came through. So the people are just great, and we just can't wait for our 4th walkathon next year.
I'm Bill Winters. I'm one of the fair directors of Crawford County Fair, and I'm going to talk about Crawford County Fair. First fair was in 1945. They bought 66 acres from, I think, the Hamilton farm, and their sole goal at that point was to promote agriculture. They wanted a racetrack, and they wanted a grandstand. They cut down the wood to build the grandstand, and at the time we were at war, and the government would not allow them to build a grandstand for like a year or 2 later, but that's when they actually built the grandstand. Our main focus is to promote agriculture. We are the 2nd largest agriculture fair in the state, with the exception of the State Farm Show. We have more cattle and horses than most all the other fairs, and a lot of the other fairs look up to us and govern their fair by how we're doing. We normally are considered one of the 3 or 4 largest in the whole state. We are by far the largest one in Northwest Pennsylvania. Our attendance is usually to 150 to 175,000 people, and we draw people from Canada, New York, Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania. We draw from quite a large area. A lot of the people come for our shows because there is hardly a big name who hasn't been to our fair so far. The original grandstand they built, we tore down here about 15, 18 years ago. We built a new grandstand, then we built a new stage. Our performers who have come to perform on our stage. Can't get over that we have such a beautiful venue. We hold roughly 10,000 people when you look at the grandstand and the stage, grandstand and the racetrack. That seems to be, 10,000 figures seems to be one of the figures that the big stars are looking for, the ability to have that many people come. The money that we generate from the fair goes right back into the fairgrounds. The county owns the fairgrounds. Everybody in Crawford County owns that land and the buildings. Whenever we generate a profit, we build a building, we do some kind of an improvement, we then dedicate that and give it right back to the county. So everything we make goes right back into the ground. Since 1978, that's when we started having our first big shows and the bigger name entertainers. We've put almost $4 million back into the fairgrounds. Now, I already told you we got a new stage, a new grandstand, we built a new beef complex down below, we built a youth show arena, we got home show 1, we got additions on ag building. Every year we put between $125,000 and $175,000 back into the infrastructure. Most of it people don't even see, because in our effort to help the handicapped people, we are burying lines so that there's not hoses to go over, there's not electric lines to go over, and we blacktop more areas. This year we just made a new area for the handicapped buses to pull in and pull off. It's all blacktopped. We're trying to make it easier for those people who have special needs. We are always looking to improve the infrastructure. Like I mentioned before, for the handicap accessibility, we always want to review that. Every year we do. We are always in the maintenance of buildings is a big thing. We need to continually update the buildings. We need to replace some buildings. We have some pie in the sky ideas of what we want to do, but we need to make money each year to do that so we can accomplish these things. But we're looking forward, and like I said, we're the benchmark that most of the fairs around here look at.
My name is Michael Kane, and I'm the director of the Ben Franklin School of Industry. It took place in Meadville during the summer, the last week of June, and it was a week-long intensive course in collaboration with Allegheny College and local community members and business leaders. About 29 years ago, I got my degree in education, mathematics education, and I'm from the city of Pittsburgh, so when I moved up to Meadville, or came up to take what was a one-year sub job, but then within less than a month they hired me as a permanent teacher, and Meadville really liked me, and I really liked the place. It's one of those things where you click. Well, I had always thought that education needed to take a different direction than what we see in public schools, even though I'm a public school teacher. And it was when I bumped into a friend of mine, a professor in economics, Dr. Steve Oyiwu from here, and he'd done a report on a skills gap. And he said, well, the people in the industries around here aren't finding the people they need. And I said, that can't be true. We have fabulous young people. What's happening here? And what happens is that our fabulous young people see the grass is greener on the other side, and they don't realize the grass is doggone green here too. And so the easiest way to fill your skills gap is to keep your young people here and give them a reason to stay here. But what young people? Well, most of the talented ones were leaving. But is that all the talented ones? The answer is no. Most of the kids that are talented get underemployed or they get disenchanted because they come to school, they behave, they do as they're told, and because of all those things, they just become part of the crowd. Well, that's the type of individual that we wanted in the School of Industry. We wanted to hit every demographic that there was so that we had male and female, the social and economic system that covered it all, some of the most talented and some of the kids that were the least recognized. But what they had in common was a desire to learn and a love of their community and a wanting to see the community prosper. We got 17 kids and we put it all together and we looked for a vehicle that would interest them. So I chose catapults. You say, well, why catapults? Well, it's a simple machine. It's got a long history, and we wanted to catapult our students forward in their life. So we picked that, but not just a catapult that shoots a rock. It was to shoot a foam paint covered orb or ball at a target. What type of target? A castle. A castle with wizards of indifference and an ogre of ignorance holding hostage all the people inside the castle. So the targets were hit the ogre, which was a low target, hit the tower with the wizards in it, which was a high target, and then shoot something over like they used to in the olden days, which was a dead animal or something. So we got a dog toy and dipped it in paint, and they shot over, a cow of some kind over top. So they had to have 3 things, and from 4 different locations. That was the competition. Now, the Ben Franklin School of Industry is a product and goal-driven educational experience. And what makes that so important is if you have a product, which was the catapult, and a goal, which is to hit targets and have it actually work and function, you can now have a competition, a friendly competition, which people recognized as something in which everyone can achieve some type of win in. Even though there's someone who's going to be more accurate at shooting that catapult, there are all of the catapults being shot. And that was one of the amazing things about it. So we used that as our vehicle. And then we looked for an exemplary person to basically target who we would like to be at, who we would like to model our lives after. And Ben Franklin comes to my mind right away because he does everything. We had 17 students participate. They were a vast demographic, and their ages went from my daughter and her friend, which were 11 years old, to 20 years old, graduates of high school, because we were trying to find jobs and places for even our graduates. Then we also had the interns. And what we found was in beginnings of programs, you always have drop-offs, people that wasn't their fit. But that's not what happened at the School of Industry. We had something amazing happen, something I call a unicorn, because it's not supposed to happen. We had 100% attendance, 100% engagement, 100% achievement of their goals. That's not something that's ever supposed to happen, but it did happen. And how did it happen? It happened because everyone was a student and everyone was a teacher. From the all participants, whether they were the master teachers that were hired to instruct and mentor the students, whether they were the interns, or whether they were the students themselves. They got a chance to express themselves, and in building the catapult and in writing and doing other things, we all saw that everyone had great ideas and we could springboard off of everyone. So no one was just a follower, we were all leaders. My favorite thing about Meadville is just the overwhelming specialness of this location. Now you have to understand that this is a pioneer town. 1788, George Washington does sleep here. That matters. As a Freemason, as the president of the Masonic Center, I live and breathe the Masonic Code, and you have to understand that George Washington, Ben Franklin, very important to the order and very important to our country. And the fact that George Washington was here brings a magic to this place, an importance to this place. We are a pioneer town. We are a town of doers. This place is a happening place, and that it is a center of something, and that it's so fabulous and so magical, it draws all kinds of people here. We have this wonderful college, we have this wonderful industry, we invent things, we create things, we are creators and doers here, and that has just infatuated me with this town.
I'm Lizzie Thompson, and I'll be talking about Allegheny College traditions and history. I am a senior, theater major, chemistry minor. I'm involved in Greek life. I'm a sister of Kappa Alpha Theta. I am also the tour guide student supervisor for the Office of Admissions. Well, the tour guides spend about a week over the summer going through a pretty intensive training where they learn a lot about the history of the college. That way they can pass that on to potential students and families. And they also spend a lot of time learning how to share their own stories because we want tours to be personalized. We don't want it to sound like a list of facts, or we want it to be a conversation. So students learn a lot about how to share their own stories, which I think is really important. Well, my favorite piece of Allegheny history is the Bentley sycamore, which is a giant sycamore that's planted right outside of Bentley. And it's kind of an old Greek tradition to plant a sycamore tree next to a house. It brings good luck because it blocks the sun or something like that. But when the tree was planted by Timothy Alden, at the college's founding. He said that as long as the tree was alive and growing, so would the college be. So that's my favorite piece of history, and I don't really know why. I just think it's really great. But there's also a really big tradition with the 13th plank of the bridge, the rustic bridge. And I guess it became tradition somewhere along the line that if a freshman girl is kissed while standing on the 13th plank by an upperclassman boy, she's off limits for all 4 years of college. But nobody really likes that tradition because nobody wants to be off limits or have the girls in their class off limits. So it has become a counter tradition, I suppose, to steal the 13th plank. So every year, toward the beginning of the year, it's pretty much always stolen. I actually stole it 2 summers ago with my roommates. It's a fun piece of history, and it's a big thing for alumni as well. Alumni will frequently come back and kiss on the 13th plank. It's really sweet, actually. I gave a tour to an alumni who had to have been like 82, I think he said he was 82, but he brought his wife back, who didn't go to Allegheny, and kissed her on the 13th plank, and it was beautiful. But another really big piece of history is Bentley. I mean, Bentley is the oldest building on campus, so it's 200 years old now, and there's a lot of traditions that go along with it. One of the big ones is that in the 3rd floor, there's a room that's called the chalk room, and it's kind of a rite of passage for seniors. During senior week, which is the last week on campus for seniors, they get the opportunity to go up into the chalk room and write their names up on the walls, and there's names from years and years and years. So it's really neat to kind of take a second to look at all the names as well. Bentley is also the building where President William McKinley took a cow up to the bell tower while he was at school here, which is why he did not graduate from here, actually. He was politely asked to leave after that. But the cow is a really big thing, and our dining hall actually is named McKinley's, and the name is written in the shape of a cow as kind of a homage to that cow up in the bell tower. It is our 200-year anniversary, so it's a big milestone for Allegheny, big milestone for any institution. But I'm really excited, especially because I'm in the graduating class for the bicentennial, which is cool. But we're doing a lot of things to kind of celebrate the history of Allegheny in the past 200 years. We recently did this thing called the Big Picture, which is where we got everybody on the whole campus together. We got the entire campus. It was crazy. It was insane. We gathered them on Brooks Walk, and they had someone go up on like a cherry picker thing and take a picture of everyone together, which was really neat. And we're also doing a lot of really cool things with homecoming, and graduation is going to be really big. Everything is just kind of bigger and better than normal just to celebrate. But we're also looking forward to the next 200 years, and we're thinking a lot about our future and how we can continue to make history. Students love Meadville. It would be hard to go to a college and not become integrated in the community that surrounds you, but students do a lot of active service downtown. We just actually had Make a Difference Day yesterday, which a lot of students did a lot of service projects all around Meadville, helping out the community members. But students also are really excited every month for Second Saturday, which is at the Market House, and students flock down there and look at the markets and grab the food. And it's really a homey place for the students. It makes Allegheny College feel more like a home.
Support for our town's Stories from Meadville comes from Ainsworth Pet Nutrition, a proud member of the Meadville community for more than 80 years, committed to providing dogs and cats with Dad's Pet Foods, Rachel Ray Nutrish, Back to Basics, Better Than, and other trusted brands. With more information at ainsworthpets.com. Allegheny College, located in Meadville, Pennsylvania for 200 years, serving students with an immersive educational experience and encouraging students to look at academic disciplines from multiple perspectives. With more information at allegheny.edu. Meadville Medical Center, dedicated to patients and community with a team approach that includes patients, physicians, and advanced medical technology. With more information at meadvillemedicalcenter.com. Meadville Medical Center, people you know, care you trust, always. And by Armstrong Cable, Crawford Heritage Community Foundation, Glenn Prisborski, Hagen Business Machines of Meadville, Westbury, and by viewers like you. Thank you.